What happens when two giant democracies, one with massive brain power, the other with huge military strength, find themselves heading toward a quiet breakup? What exactly went wrong between India and America? And most importantly, who should we blame for this mess? This isn't just about politics. This is about power, ego, money, and rules crashing into each other right now. In the next few minutes, we're not giving you the usual news stories. We're going deep into what everyone refuses to talk about openly. The real truth behind the cracks, the tech battles, the hidden deals, the control games, the fake friendships, and a growing India that won't be told who to support. If you think this is just about foreign relations, think again. This is about tomorrow's world, a future being decided not in public speeches, but in secret meetings. Stay with me until the end, and you'll walk away not just knowing more, but seeing everything differently. Let's dive in. The fight for tech control between India and America has become one of the most quiet but deadly issues causing their relationship to fall apart. At the center of this mess is a growing problem of trust. Both countries know that winning at new technologies like AI, quantum computers, 5G networks, space missions, and computer chip supply chains is everything. But their way of working together on these things is full of doubt and suspicion. America, used to being the boss of global tech rules, often creates strict systems that help its own companies and national goals first. India, on the flip side, is no longer happy to just be a customer buying tech from others. It wants to become a maker, builder, and creator of its own tech. This dream naturally creates fights with the people already in power. The lack of trust gets worse when we talk about data safety, digital spying, and who controls the computer programs that run our lives. India sees Western tech giants as bullies who want to control everything and spy on everyone, while America stays worried about India getting closer to other tech powers like Russia and China. Joint projects and defense tech partnerships, while they sound great on paper, often crash and burn because of too many rules, fights over who owns what ideas, and endless paperwork. This lack of openness and unequal control systems turn cooperation into a dangerous political gamble. The failure to build a real partnership focused on future technology has become the main reason trust between these two democracies is breaking down, making technology a wall between them instead of a bridge that connects them. America's use of punishment through sanctions and bullying tactics has seriously damaged the India-US relationship. For many years, America has used a set of tools that includes money punishments, trade blocks, and conditional help to show its power around the world. While this might work with smaller or dependent countries, India has always said no to this one-sided pressure. The expectation that New Delhi would change its important decisions to match Washington's political goals has completely backfired. Examples like India continuing to trade with Russia during the Ukraine war or its independent choice on oil buying were met with hidden threats and legal warnings from U.S. politicians. Instead of encouraging teamwork, these actions created a feeling of diplomatic bullying. India, driven by a policy of doing what's best for itself, does not accept foreign meddling in its decision-making process. Every time America tries to influence India's defense purchases or foreign policy choices through pressure, it creates a nationalist backlash. Also, sanctions or threats of punishing Indian companies for working with countries outside America's approved list only makes the trust gap bigger. Even in areas like sharing defense technology, America often puts limiting conditions that go against the spirit of partnership. This approach treats India like a tool for American policy instead of a real strategic partner. Instead of building long-term trust, these tactics have created anger, pushed India to find other allies, and led India to look for other international groups where respect and equality matter more than obedience and agreement. India's strategic neutrality has become a major problem in its relationship with America. As global divisions get stronger, especially with conflicts like the Russia-Ukraine war and growing tensions with China, America has increasingly expected its partners to take clear sides. However, India has repeatedly chosen to stay neutral, guided by its national interest rather than outside expectations. This position, rooted in its historical non-alignment movement, is not a sign of being unsure, but a deliberate and sovereign strategy to keep flexibility and independence in foreign policy. While America sees this as inconsistency or even quiet opposition, India sees alignment with any one side as limiting in an increasingly multipolar world. India's Kanti. Renewed engagement with Russia for defense supplies and energy needs despite U.S. pressure shows its commitment to strategic independence. At the same time, India strengthens ties with America in trade, technology, and defense without fully accepting Washington's global story. This balancing act confuses American policymakers who expect simple loyalties in a Cold War-style framework. But India refuses to be a piece on someone else's political chessboard. It wants the freedom to work with multiple powers based on changing realities, not rigid alliances. This insistence on neutrality is often seen as defiance by Washington. But for India, it's a matter of self-respect and survival. America's inability to fully accept this neutral stance adds to growing diplomatic distance, making mutual trust and long-term commitment harder to maintain. Trade imbalance and rising protective policies have added serious strain to the India-US relationship. Despite being one of the fastest-growing trade partnerships, both nations have frequently fought over tariffs, market access, and regulatory barriers. America has often criticized India's high import duties, particularly on electronics, farm products, and medical equipment, seeing them as unfair restrictions on American goods. On the other hand, India has expressed frustration over U.S. trade policies that favor domestic subsidies and discriminate against Indian products through tighter visa rules and inconsistent tariff practices. These trade disputes have resulted in back-and-forth retaliation, including America removing India's preferential trade status under the Generalized System of Preferences and India increasing duties on several American exports. Data localization, e-commerce regulation, and digital tax policies have become newer battlegrounds. India's push for storing user data domestically and ensuring control over digital infrastructure is seen by America as a threat to its tech giants, while India views it as essential for national security and digital sovereignty. Furthermore, complex negotiations around defense contracts often stall due to conditions imposed by U.S. defense manufacturers related to intellectual property and technology transfer. All these factors point toward deeper economic friction, where both sides are increasingly inward-looking and protective of their domestic industries. Instead of acting as a pillar of cooperation, trade has become a source of tension, reflecting broader mistrust in intentions and a shift away from the spirit of open market globalization that once defined the optimism around this bilateral partnership. The gap between values and interests is a core reason behind the growing disconnect in India-US relations. America often positions its foreign policy on a foundation of liberal democratic values like free speech, human rights, religious freedom, and civil liberties. These ideals are regularly used as benchmarks to evaluate and influence its international partnerships. India, while also being a democracy, takes a more practical approach to governance and global engagement. Its decisions are shaped by national priorities such as economic development, internal security, regional stability, and cultural identity, not by how they align with Western ideological expectations. This fundamental difference creates constant friction in diplomatic conversations. When U.S. institutions or officials publicly criticize India's internal issues like internet bans, treatment of minorities, or press freedom, it is seen in New Delhi as interference rather than concern. India believes that democracy is not a one-size-fits-all model and resents moral lectures that ignore its unique context. Moreover, Washington's selective silence on similar issues in allied authoritarian regimes reveals a double standard that weakens its credibility. This clash becomes even more pronounced when strategic cooperation is on the table. America wants alignment based on shared values, but India seeks alignment based on mutual benefit. The failure to reconcile this difference makes long-term trust hard to achieve. India does not want to be seen as a junior partner molded in someone else's democratic image, but rather as a sovereign power defining its own version of democracy while pursuing national interest without apology. India's increasing involvement in multipolar alliances like BRICS, SCO, and the Global South reflects its strategic shift away from a U.S.-centered world order. As the international system shifts from single power dominance to multipolar complexity, India is actively positioning itself as an independent pole with its own voice, influence, and network. These alliances offer India greater flexibility, economic cooperation, and a platform to shape global governance on more equal terms. Unlike Western frameworks often tied to political conditions or power hierarchies, these alternative groupings emphasize sovereignty, non-interference, and multi-party cooperation. India sees this as an opportunity to diversify its options, reduce dependency on any single power, and align with countries that share similar developmental challenges and aspirations. From trade agreements to energy partnerships and defense dialogues, India's presence in these blocs signals a desire for balanced diplomacy rather than exclusive allegiance. This realignment is not a rejection of America, but a statement that India will not be boxed into alliance frameworks that compromise its autonomy. Washington, however, views India's deepening ties with countries like Russia and China within these forums with skepticism and raises questions about India's reliability as a strategic partner, especially in sensitive areas like Indo-Pacific security. Yet for India, participating in multipolar groups enhances its leverage and negotiating power, allowing it to engage with America from a position of greater strength. The divergence in how both nations view global architecture has become a subtle but powerful force pulling them apart despite shared interests on many fronts. The India-US breakup is not the result of a single mistake or moment of conflict. It is the outcome of layered contradictions between what each country expected and what reality delivered. On one side stands a nation rooted in legacy power structures, seeking alignment through influence and conditional cooperation. On the other stands a rising force determined to chart its own path, driven by autonomy, balance, and strategic sovereignty. From technology rivalries and economic friction to diplomatic pressure and value-based clashes, every tension point reveals a deeper truth. The partnership was strong in vision but weak in mutual understanding and respect. As the world transitions from a single power-dominated past to a multipolar future, both countries must decide whether they evolve as equals or part ways in pursuit of their own definitions of progress and respect. The breakup, if complete, will not be a sudden collapse. It will be a silent drift, fueled by mistrust, misalignment, and missed opportunities for genuine partnership. But the door to renewal is never permanently closed if there is willingness to show respect, honesty, and strategic clarity from both sides. The choice facing both nations is clear. Adapt to a new reality where partnership means equality, or continue down a path where two of the world's largest democracies become competitors instead of allies. The decision they make will not only determine their bilateral future, but will also shape the kind of world we all have to live in for the next several decades. Thank you for staying with me through this eye-opening journey into one of the most important yet underreported stories of our time. Whether you're a student trying to understand global politics, a professional working in international affairs, or simply a curious person who wants to know what's really happening in the world, remember this: the future doesn't belong to those who follow power blindly, but to those who understand it deeply. The world is changing rapidly, and the old rules no longer apply. Countries like India are no longer willing to accept junior partner status, and countries like America are struggling to adapt to a world where they can't always be the boss. Understanding these dynamics is